Hello, comic creators. Welcome to the comics industry commentary. In this episode, we'll look at the work of Tim Sale, the impact of Webtoon's advertising, and the absence of advertising in monthly comics. My name is Kamal Hennessy. I am a attorney, author, and business consultant who specializes in comics. And we're going to start our discussion with another loss of an industry talent. Tim Sale, the artist who helped redefine the origins of a lot of iconic characters, especially Batman in The Long Halloween and Dark Victory, but also Superman, Man for All Seasons, Daredevil Yellow, Spider-Man Red, Hulk Gray, and countless other comics, passed away earlier this week at the age of 66. Anyone who's read comics over the past 10, 15, 20 years is very familiar with Mr. Sale's work, especially if you've been reading the big two. And even if you haven't, and you've been exposed to things like the Arkham video games, the DC animated series, or even elements of the major Batman films, you can see Mr. Sale's fingerprints all over that work. I think we are now in a period where we have lost, in the past 6 months, 3 major talents in comics. And it is unfortunate that in many cases, we do not appreciate the work of these artists until they've left us, but much respect to Mr. Sale and everything that he did for comics. Now, switching over to the world of advertising, the online platform Webtoons earlier this week launched a major out-of-home campaign in subways, buses, cabs, and billboards in major cities around the world, including New York, Chicago, and London, with the aim, apparently, of getting more people onto the platform to boost the Webtoon readership numbers. Now, there's been a lot of backlash and outrage related to the content of some of these ads, but we're not going to talk about that here. What we're going to actually explore is ask the question, does the campaign make sense for what it seems that Webtoons is trying to do? Now, I would argue that over time, it will be proven that the ad campaign did not do or is not doing what it is it set out to do, not because necessarily of the negativity in some of the messages, but because it's not designed to actually drive activity. See, from my understanding, all advertising is designed to dictate some sort of reaction, what's called the call to action. So when you put out an ad, you're looking for a significant return on your investment. That means enough people pass by the ad and take the action you want them to take to justify spending money on the ad. But if you look at the Webtoons ad, from my perspective, there's nothing in the ad that's driving activity. I mean, it's talking about, look at these Webtoons before they get made into streaming TV shows. Well, if you're telling me it's going to be a streaming TV show, then there's no point in looking at the comic. I can just wait for the TV show. If you're saying that comics are nothing more than literature's side hustle, well, why would I want the side hustle when I could actually go just read literature? If you're saying that Webtoons is nothing but a time suck that will have you losing 6 hours out of your life and you not realizing it, well, why would I want to do that when I already have things sucking up too much of my time and energy? So if the goal was to actually get people to scan the QR code with their phone, download the Webtoons app, and actually start reading Webtoons, it seems like it would have made far more sense to actually focus on the content of Webtoons and the stories that are driving a lot of their major readership and expose that to a wider audience, because no one really downloads an app or uses a service simply for the sake of the service. They do it, especially in an entertainment standpoint, because they want some particular content. So if you wanted to see Game of Thrones, you had to get HBO. If you wanted to see Stranger Things, you had to get Netflix. It was the stories themselves that drove the usage, not the fact that the app existed, because realistically, no one cares that the app exists. They want the stories, not the app. They want the message, not the medium. But time will tell if Webtoons gets the ROI that they're looking for through this ad campaign. Although, even if they don't, they won't share those numbers either way. The other ad-related thing that I wanted to talk about this week is the lack of ads that are in modern comics. Anybody who's read comics over the past 20, 30 years will remember that there was a period where there were quite a few ads in monthly comics. Anything from sea monkeys to x-ray glasses to Twinkies to toys to whatever. With the rise of the direct market and the transition to single issue comics as more of a collector's item, the ads were pulled out, which subsequently raised the price of monthly comics, which is now a barrier to entry for a lot of people who are considering getting into the medium, because $3.99, $4.99 for a 22-issue comic that isn't really a complete story in the first place doesn't really make sense. The idea in talking to people from Marvel who have knowledge about, how the impact of ads and trying to get ads, their response was, well, there's not enough major companies who are willing to actually put ads in the comics anymore because the ROI is not there. The return on investment's not there because the circulation's not there, because they're not bringing in enough eyeballs to actually justify the cost. I think that is accurate, but it is also misguided, because if you have a niche product, then you don't want a mass market ad, you want a niche ad. If you have a specialized sport like, I don't know, curling, you don't necessarily want Ford to advertise with you. You want those advertisers who are specifically related to that activity. So if you have something like a superhero comic, then there's a huge amount of secondary goods, toys, games, hats, posters, TV shows, anything else that specifically relate to that market. And they would actually respond to those ads if the ads were in the book. And that could, although it may not, reduce the price of comics, which would then increase the number of people who are willing to actually buy comics, as long as your distribution channels worked out. So I think if you're looking for different revenue streams as an emerging or independent publisher, and you're considering ads as one of the ways to actually do it, look very specifically. As specific as your story is, as specific as your demographic is, that's how specific your ad should be. So if you, let's say you have a martial arts comic, well, then maybe the local martial arts schools where your comic is being distributed is a better choice for advertising than trying to get Coke, which you will never get. So like everything else in your comic, the revenue streams, the ads, the demographics all have to match the story that you're telling. Otherwise, you're not going to get the results that you're looking for, in my opinion. So that's going to be it for this week's comics industry commentary. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. And if you want to get more in-depth videos and more in-depth information about the comic book industry, consider the Comics Publishing Institute. You will find a link to joining that organization down in the show notes. So until next week, have fun with your comics.